In just days, Republican primary voters will go to the polls to make an enormous decision. Who will replace Lindsey Graham on the ballot as the next U.S. Senator? We've invited all the candidates to come have a conversation with you, the voters. Those that are willing are moving past the 30-second sound bites, the prepackaged commercials, to have a real, genuine conversation, putting themselves out there to reveal who they are and what they believe. I'm John Parker. This is South Carolina Faith and Freedom Coalition, and we're off to the races. I'm joined here today with Duke Buckner, a teacher turned newspaperman turned attorney who was on city council in Walterboro and has run against Congressman Jim Clyburn multiple times and for the U.S. Senate. Duke Buckner,
John,
thank you for having
Mr.
us
Parker,
today.
thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
I'd like to start with thanking you for challenging Congressman Jim Clyburn. Those are uphill battles. The 6th District is a difficult one. You know that you're at a long shot, but chose to stand up and be that Republican voice in those hard odds. And I just want to personally say we appreciate you putting yourself out there against those odds.
Thank you.
So many of the viewers are not going to know who Duke Buckner is. So I'd like to start out with who are you and why are you running?
Okay. Well, John, I am originally, again, from Walterboro, South Carolina, down in Colleton County in the low country of South Carolina. I graduated from Walterboro High School in 1990, went off to get my Bachelor of Arts in English Education from South Carolina State in Orangeburg. And then immediately after I graduated, I taught public school English, 7th and 8th grade, which was very challenging on the middle school level. And then I also taught American literature at Walterboro High School. And then my wife and I decided to go into the newspaper business. And so I resigned from the school district and we published a weekly newspaper for 6 years called the Community Times Dispatch. And I learned a lot in the newspaper business, covering events and stories, all the issues, city council, county council. It gave me a great perspective on making sure that you know both sides of the issues before you make an opinion or make a decision. But my heart was always to go to law school, John, and so I got accepted to a school down in South Florida called Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale. So I sold a newspaper in 2003, moved down to South Florida, and that was a huge cultural shock. I wasn't coming from Walterboro and moving to South Florida was a totally different culture and area, but I graduated in 2006 and got my first job as a public defender in Fort Lauderdale, and then I practiced law in Florida for a while, but then my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer and he asked me to come back to Walterboro. That was in 2009. So I came back in 2009, immediately wanted to get involved in the community, ran for Walterboro City Council, was elected to City Council, served the term, and took the South Carolina bar. Eventually I passed and opened up my own law office in August of 2012. So I've been practicing law in the great state of South Carolina for the last August will be 14 years, advocating for the rights of people and making sure that they are taken care of in terms of their rights being advocated for in the judicial system.
And what motivated you to run this time in this special election?
Well, John, this is the reason why I'm running. I want to warn the American people and the great people of South Carolina about the impending socialist revolution that is trying to happen here in our country and all across the nation. There are two revolutions that have to happen before communism can come into place. First is the democratic revolution. That's when the people rise up against the monarchy, oligarchy, or feudal system. We had that in 1776. The next revolution that has to happen before you get to communism is the socialist revolution, and that's when the state or the government takes over private property, private enterprise, the means of production, and there can be no socialist revolution without the takeover of agriculture by the government. And once you have the socialist revolution, which we haven't had in 250 years, the next step is communism. And under communism, millions of innocent people die, starve, mayhem and death, and we don't want that in the United States. And I'm here to sound the alarm because that drum, John, is beating louder and louder with the Democratic Socialists of America, who know exactly what they're doing and why they want to bring a socialist revolution to America.
It's a lofty message. When we look at the United States Senate in South Carolina, we've had outsized influence in the U.S. Senate and the nation with some remarkable figures: Strom Thurmond, Hollings,
Yes.
Jim DeMint, Lindsey Graham most recently, Tim Scott, of course. What qualities do you think South Carolinians are looking for and expect in their next U.S. Senator, and why you?
Well, I think one of the issues is the people of South Carolina want someone who's going to go up there and represent their values and beliefs and not be bought. I want the citizens of South Carolina to know that this Senate seat cannot be bought. It's not for sale. We don't want folks to go up there and just be pawns or to be sellouts to large donors and super PACs, but someone who's going to go up there and represent the people of South Carolina, their values and their beliefs, so that when you see your senator, you know where they are and where they stand on the issues because they've built that relationship with the people.
Yes, and you know, when it comes to representing those values, and there are going to be some truly difficult choices where different groups in South Carolina, different sets of voters are going to have different desires. There's what leadership is going to pull, what direction they'll pull you into. You'll be faced with some truly difficult decisions if you were to be elected. What values, what principles, what philosophy drives you when you face that kind of difficult decision?
Well, John, I'm a born-again believer of Jesus Christ, and I believe in doing what the Lord instructs us to do as good Christians, to love your neighbor, treat people the way you want to be treated, and to do the right thing. And that's going to be based on the facts and the circumstances. And a lot of decisions are made in quiet rooms with just you and the Lord. And at the end of the day, I got to stand before Him. So I want to make sure that I do what is right and what's just by Him and by the people of South Carolina. So that's my overarching philosophy. As it relates to government, I believe the purpose of government is two things. One, to reward those who do good, and to punish evildoers. So I'm going to go up there to make government work for those people who are getting up, going to work, playing by the rules, doing the right thing. Their government should reward them for doing good and doing right. And those that are killing, murdering, stealing, or doing things that hurt this country, they should be punished, and not only punished, but punished severely.
What kind of punishment? Can you give me a couple examples of that?
Well, if you rape a woman in South Carolina or in our nation, you should be severely punished for that. I believe that the death penalty is justified in that situation. If you go out and you murder someone intentionally, I believe the death penalty is warranted in situations like that.
So primarily we're talking criminal justice.
Yeah,
here.
criminal justice. I'm sorry, criminal justice. And then also if you're price fixing and price gouging and trying to set up monopolies and things like that, I think our antitrust laws should be enforced very strictly to stop those type of things from happening so that we can have a truly free market.
Okay, great. So thinking about the kind of transition here, I'd like you to finish this sentence for me.
Okay.
America's biggest threat is?
Socialism and the socialist revolution.
And
that's the biggest threat to America right now. And, yes.
And why? Can you tell me why you think that?
because, as I mentioned earlier, the next step is communism. And under that communist policy and rules, and we can look at communist China under Mao Zedong, where 34 million Chinese people died either through starvation, through purges by the Communist Party, where they just shoot and kill you because you don't agree with what they're saying or you think differently, or you are so oppressed and so in disarray that you commit suicide. And all of that was going on during that time. And also, when you look at the Bolshevik Revolution in the Soviet Union, Lenin and Stalin, we had 14 million Soviet Union people die under communism. And so, and I want to share this with you, John, and I'm very passionate about this. And I'm going to look right in the camera. If you're a socialist and you want socialism, America is a free market, capitalist society. And I would encourage you to leave America and go live in a socialist country where you can do all the socialism that you want, and leave America alone.
You know, I'd say one of the things that's kind of generating this drift towards socialism among many, even communism, among many younger voters, the Madami kind of crowd, is the affordability, the rising cost, the inflation that has kind of overtaken things, the rising housing prices and access to that housing. What would you do as U.S. Senator? What do you see the U.S. Senate being able to do to help address these rising costs and inflation across America?
Well, there's several things, John, but first I want to deal with housing, because that's one of the primary areas where the younger generation are seeing higher prices for rent, and some feel that they will never be able to even buy a house. And so the way that we deal with housing is basic economics, supply and demand. Right now we have more demand than we have supply. And as a result of that, the prices are going up. So you say, well, where's the demand coming from? Well, during the Biden administration, we had millions of illegals coming to our country. And I think when I checked for South Carolina, there are 139,000 illegal status individuals living in our state. And they are making demands on the scarcity of goods that we have in goods and services. In this case, it would be housing. So I would propose that if you are a landlord and you are subsidizing in any way, getting any kind of government subsidy to rent your house, that individual who rents has to show that they have legal status or citizenship, or you can't rent to them, because citizens of America should have the first opportunity to buy and to rent here in America. And that's not happening because they're competing with folks who should not be here, and they are driving up the cost of housing by increasing demand. Okay? And then second, what I would do, and this is a cultural thing, but we want to encourage more marriages in America. Right now, you know, one person living here, another person living here, another person living there. If folks got married and lived together, that would also free up some housing opportunities. And also, there are a lot of dilapidated homes that either fell by the wayside because the owner died or passed away or is caught up in heirs property. We see that all throughout the state of South Carolina. We can put aside federal dollars to help bring those homes back online and make them affordable for people to be able to rent and have a home. And then there are a lot of young people who are living with their parents right now because they just cannot afford to pay $2,000, $3,000 for rent. I just want to encourage them that even though you're living with them right now, it won't always be that way. Take that time to learn as much as you can from your parents, to save, to invest, and then when you are ready to move out on your own, everything that you've learned while you're staying at home is going to better prepare you for when you get out on your own. So don't feel bad about it. It's okay you can make it in this country. And the socialism message, which sounds very appealing, free housing, free rent, free food, free health care, somebody has to pay for that. And at the end of the day, the result of the socialist message is communism and death and destruction for millions of people, and we don't want that.
So that's great to address the housing. What about things like fuel and groceries and some of these more day-to-day costs, as just the value of our dollar, the savings accounts of seniors suddenly not being worth what they were just the day before?
You know, John, when I ran for the U.S. Senate in 2020, the country was at $19 trillion in debt. Today, we're nearing $40 trillion in national debt. We've almost doubled our debt in 6 years. It's insane. We have to reduce the size of government. We have to stop fraud and abuse. We have to put America first. That's just the bottom line. Put America first, and let's get our financial house in order, because the inflation that we're paying is driving up the costs for everything, housing, food, everything. So we have to get our financial house in order by reducing our national debt. I never hear any politician talking about taking some money and putting it towards the debt. My opponents, Russell Fry, Representative Fry, and Representative Norman, they were in Congress when we ran up $20 trillion in debt. What do they have to say? Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to talk with them and ask them that question, but we can't sustain that type of spending, John. So we have to reduce our spending, and I would be proposing across the board 20% reduction in the federal budget and take 20%. That 20%.
Okay. We're going to make some deep cuts.
Across the board, except for Medicare, Social Security, because those are programs that those are earned benefits. Folks have paid into that. Therefore, they should expect every penny back. Okay, so I wouldn't deal with it, but everything else is subject to.
Is on the table.
Is on the table. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, Trump has done a good job of securing the border. You were talking a moment ago about the housing and landlords not housing illegal immigrants. What do you think immigration policy, if you were king for the day, what would you like American immigration policy to look like beyond securing the border?
Well, I think that as a lawyer, you should come into the country legally, not circumvent, cut the line. There are people who are doing it the right way. They're filling the paperwork out. They're doing it the right way, and that's the way that it should be. But then you got folks that are cutting the line. When I mean cutting the line, they're just crossing over the border, or they're finding some other way to come into the country, and they're here illegally. And so the immigration policy should be, if you're in this country illegally, you need to go back, and I hate to say it, but go back where you came from and come back the proper way.
Do you see the legal immigration in our country as about right, where we have for how many we allow in? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? What about guest workers and HB1 visas?
Well, I think we need to increase the work visas, because there are a lot of corporations and companies that are in need of workers to come over and supply the labor that we need in order to keep the country moving. So I would increase that. But everyone else
about where it should be.
Where it should be. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One of the issues that that I particularly care about is artificial intelligence, because from my point of view, it's almost issue 1, 2, 3 in the long term, because it's poised to transform every aspect of society. What do you see as Congress's role in AI and guiding it as we continue to develop this incredible technology?
Well, first of all, I think the United States has a responsibility to make sure that AI is used morally. There are ethical issues that are involved in AI, and that there are potential environmental issues that could cause irreparable harm, that we need to make sure. Also, the possibility of driving up energy costs and making regular folk pay for that. So those are issues that we need to address. As for AI as a whole, I'm in support of the technology. I think we don't want to be behind our competitors like China and India and Japan, who are using AI in order to move their country forward. There's talk about putting some of these AI data centers under the water. Like they proposing that, and as Elon Musk is proposing, put it up in space. Wherever we put them.
They want to cover the world in data centers, don't they?
Wherever they put them, we just want to make sure that it doesn't hurt or harm people and the environment.
Do you think that America's posture should be more of a support for the innovation overall, or should it be in this race with China? Or do you think it should do more to regulate and try to protect workers as we go forward and kind of have increased oversight on these companies?
No, we need to support the technology so that we are not behind in our race with China. China plays a long-term game, and they are working as much as they can to spread communism around the world. When you see they're influencing our elections, creating fake Facebook posts and things, driving division in our country, we have to make sure that we are never behind in a technology race with China. But we want to also temper that with making sure that our citizens are taken care of and we're not doing anything that's going to hurt or harm our citizens and the environment with artificial intelligence. But we can never allow China to get ahead of us on anything.
Right. Election integrity. We've got the Save America Act. Do you support it, A?
Yes.
Voter ID for across the country. With that act, they are considering, the Democrats are blocking it. Would you be for dismantling the filibuster so we would not use the filibuster anymore to get the Save America Act across the passed?
Yes. Well, first let me say I'm in favor of the Save America Act. And I would expand it to also include, as I mentioned earlier, requirements for landlords who are getting any subsidy, Section 8 or federal housing subsidy. If a person wants to rent, they have to show legal status or citizenship. And we have to put a restriction or a time restriction on foreign nationals or foreign entities being able to buy homes and buy land in the United States. We've got to stop that for right now until we can figure out, because we got China buying land, they're buying farmland. Why? Why do they want to buy farmland, John? They want to buy farmland because they know if they can control agriculture, which is what I mentioned earlier, they can control people. Because if folks can't eat, that's a huge way of controlling people.
Sure.
So I would support it. As for the nuclear option, getting rid of the filibuster, I'm not in favor of that. I think we need to keep the filibuster because it's an important tool to get the Senate to work together. That's why it's there. And so to get rid of it, we're going to constantly having a back and forth, tit for tat, and that's not going to be beneficial in the long run for the American people.
So you clearly oppose socialism. You're concerned about China, can't let them get away. or get ahead of us. What is your overall position on foreign policy across the globe, whether it's in Ukraine or in China? What kind of posture should America have going forward?
You know, the late Senator Lindsey Graham was an expert on foreign policy. And I agree with Senator Graham's position that we should always work with our allies to build partnerships and to build relationships with other countries, such as Israel, such as Canada at one point, but you know, they've swung so far to the left. You know, we're gonna have to really take a look at Canada, but we have to work with our NATO allies and of course the only democracy in the Middle East, which is Israel, to help spread freedom and democracy around the world. We don't want to have to use our military, but we will use it if we have to. So I think the President, Trump, does not get the credit for doing what we're doing in Iran right now. Gas was low, we had the good times going. But there's a nuclear threat, and nuclear proliferation is one of the biggest threats to the United States. And he said, no, we have to make a sacrifice and neutralize this nuclear threat from Iran, because what they'll do is threaten their neighbors, threaten the world. How do we know that? Look at North Korea. They did the same thing. They got a nuclear weapon, and what does Kim Jong-un do? He's shooting rockets and threatening Japan and threatening Asia, you know, but you don't hear much from him now. Yeah. You don't hear much from him, but he's still there because he has a nuclear power. So the president should get more credit for what we're doing, and I think we should finish the job. So to answer your question on the foreign policy, work with our NATO allies, build relationships with countries around the world, spread freedom and democracy, and use our military when we have to in order to protect American interests.
And would you support funding Ukraine and sanctions on Russia, or do you think we should be kind of pulling back more from that?
Well, I agree with the sanctions on Russia because, again, they are, in my opinion, sowing seeds of socialism and communism in the United States. So I would support the sanctions. As for Ukraine, I think there comes a point where, hey, they gotta purchase stuff from us. You know, there's no more, you know, freebies, so to speak. We want to support Ukraine, but they're going to have to pay us for our help now. We've helped them as much as we can, and now it's time that they pay us so that we can get our house in order here in the United States.
And on Israel, you know, there's been a rising skepticism, a strain of skepticism from young conservatives online. And if you saw a 25-year-old that wasn't alive for 9/11, what would you say to them about Israel and our alliance with them?
I would ask them, and I'm trying to get the correct number, but of the 25 terrorists that flew planes into the World Trade Center and tried to fly a plane into the Pentagon, how many of them were of the Jewish faith?
None.
From my research, the answer is none. That's the end of, to me, that would be what I would ask them. How many of them, of those terrorists, were of the Jewish faith? And the answer is none. So I don't believe that Israel is trying to hurt us. They're our ally in the Middle East. They help us with intelligence. They give the United States information about the radical Islamist jihadists that want to kill innocent Americans. So we want to make sure we keep that relationship and that relationship be strong because it aids to the security of the United States.
Kind of shifting gears here, this is the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Yeah. What do you see is the greatest cultural or moral challenge that America is facing today? And what role would you say that government has to play in addressing that particular social challenge, if any?
Again, going back to socialism and the subsequent communist rule, if the socialist revolution were to happen, the communists have no regard for God. God is not a part of their policy. The God that they serve is the Communist Party. Our Constitution and our country and our Pledge of Allegiance, we reference the acknowledgement of a deity who is God Almighty, who overlooks and oversees and who is involved and cares about the affairs of men. And when you remove God from the public square, when you remove the tenements of the Ten Commandments, or just the basic golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. When that's removed, society begins to crumble. Society begins to fail.
Which on that, faith can play a significant, and many of our founders plays a significant role in how they govern, how they lead. What is your personal story with faith and your journey? And
well, the Lord saved me when I was a sophomore at South Carolina State. He called me. It's a long story. I don't mind sharing my
we'd love to hear
personal story. I've been dating a young lady and through high school, and to make a long story short, we broke up, and that had a profound effect on me. And so when I went to South Carolina State, there was a homecoming, and I think she came up there, and for whatever reason she didn't talk to me, and back then, whatever beer or whatever drinks I had, John, I was very hurt about that. And so whatever I was drinking at the time said, Duke, why don't you, here's a microwave. Why don't you put your head in that microwave and turn it on and just blow your head up? And so I put my head in the microwave, but I realized I couldn't close it in order to turn it on. So I know, I laugh about it now. It's very funny.
There's few beers in,
yeah,
clearly.
But I did find out later that you can turn the microwave on with the door open, but I didn't know how to do that. Yeah. And so that was a failed attempt. And so I said, you know what, I'll just take some pills, whatever is in this cabinet, and I'll die in my sleep. Praise God, I did not die in my sleep. I woke up the next day. I drove back to Walterboro, and my neighbor came across and said, hey, we're having a youth revival at our church. And I'm like, oh, that's the last place I want to go. I'm not going to that. But I don't know. I ended up going. And I heard the Baptist preacher talking about a man who could heal the broken heart, who could set the captives free, who could save your soul and give you a new life in him. And that man was Jesus Christ. And so when he made the altar call for those who wanted to give their life to Christ, I came to the Lord. And that was in 1992. So I've been walking with the Lord as my Savior ever since. And he's changed my life and gave me a new life in Christ. I'm not perfect. The Christian life is not perfect. But, I read Psalm 32 this morning. God cares about us. And he will forgive your sins, and he will set you right on the right path if you trust in him. And those who trust in him shall not be put to shame. So that's my personal story. I
thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But yeah, I love God with all my heart, and he's blessed me. He's blessed me. I remember when I graduated law school, I had $150,000 in law school loans. I had credit card debt mortgage, medical bills. And in 10 years, the Lord, through discipline and faith, and I'm debt-free. I owe no man nothing but love. And that's why I'm so concerned about the national debt. Yeah. We can be out of debt in 10 years in this country, but we have to sacrifice. You know, when my friends used to say, hey, I'm going on vacation, we're going on a cruise, my wife would say, when we're going on a cruise? I'm saying, honey, we're not going on a cruise. I got to pay these law school loans, you know? Yeah. And over time, you know, we're not going out to dinner. We're not doing these things. We're going to pay off these bills. I'm tired of these folks calling my house. And in 10 years, the Lord paid off all my debts. I'm debt-free, and I want America to have the sound financial footing that it was on and not continue to slide down with deficit spending. So one of the proposals, John, is to have a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. We have to have a balanced budget. Every time I get paid, I make a budget. And I do my best to stick to that budget. Why can't we do that in our country? We haven't been doing that. We're spending more than what we're bringing in. And that is destroying the future of America. And that's why I'm running. America, future matters.
Thank you again for sharing that. And you're absolutely right. The Lord will redeem the time. And Yes. It is amazing how often we overestimate what we can do in the short term and then underestimate what we can do with just a little more time.
Yes, sir.
When you look at the next 6 years, if you were elected Senate, what would you hope that the voters of South Carolina would say that you have accomplished in that term?
Well, one of the first things I want to do is pass a bill that says that in an event of a government shutdown, the Congress and the executive do not get paid. Yeah. And however long it continues, the executive and the Congress do not get that money back. That money goes to pay the national debt. And I promise you that would be an encouragement for folks to come together and come up with something, because you're not going to get that money. That money is going to pay off the national debt. So I would like the folks of South Carolina to know that Duke Buckner went up there. He helped to get the financial house of the country in order, that he stood for decency and goodness and justice, that he treated people the way he wanted to be treated, that he served the people, especially the least of these among us, and that they could have a senator that they would be proud of. Say, that's my senator, and he's representing us, and he's doing a good job. That's what I want.
That would be an accomplishment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's shift into a quick lightning round. These are just short, kind of one-word phrase, sentence, sort of 1 minute answers. First one is, if you could eliminate any government department from the federal government, what department would you eliminate?
It would be the Department of Education.
And what is one of the issues Republicans do not talk about enough?
The socialist revolution.
If Congress could pass just one bill next year, what would that bill be?
The Save America Act.
What current or former U.S. Senator would you most hope to emulate or most admire?
You know, John, I have to think about that. In terms of a senator, none comes directly to mind, but in terms of a congressman, I would say J.C. Watts from Oklahoma.
J.C. Watts. Okay.
Julius Caesar Watts was very like a role model. I read his autobiography and all his books, and so I would definitely point to J.C. Watts.
J.C. Watts, that's like that. How would you describe America in one word?
Loving.
And what book should every American read?
I'm going to say the King James Version of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. It'll bless them. Yeah.
So, the mountains or the coast?
Coast.
Coast. Clemson or Carolina?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, my son went to Carolina, and my wife has a master's from Clemson. So we have a house divided. So both on that.
All right, so to wrap up, we've covered a lot of tough topics
Yes,
here. There's been, obviously, there's this looming socialism and everything. Well, we'd like to end on a brighter note because America is still one of the greatest nation in the world.
Yes.
Can you finish this sentence for me? America gives me hope because?
Because America loves God.
Because America loves God. I think
Yes.
that's great and that's true. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please like, follow, subscribe, and Duke Buckner.
Thank you. God bless you, John.
God bless.
Thank you.